So it is, what we're facing, as you just heard in that song, is an existential threat to humanity. And in our society, we're told it'll all work out okay in the end. Not necessarily. And it is on us to confront the extreme dangers that we're facing and to act. Okay, so now it's my honor to welcome up to the stage a longtime civil rights lawyer, a rabble-rouser, and somebody I've just gotten to know very recently, the founder of the Interfaith Communities United for Justice and Peace, Steve Rohde.
First, they came for the communists, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. Those are the cautionary, haunting words of the Reverend Martin Niemöller speaking in 1937. Those words have come down to us as a warning that a government will begin by moving against those in the margins, those who are vulnerable, those who are controversial, some who are despised. That government, unrelentingly, if not stopped, will continue to move even as against its own citizens. On September 11, 2001, it was Martin Niemöller's words that came to my mind. And when we formed Interfaith Communities United for Justice and Peace, a group of Jews, Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, Sikhs, and humanists, we came together because we feared exactly what this nation would do in the wake of 9/11. And it was literally the next month that I sat down to write my version of the Niemöller poem. And I adapted it as the months transpired and some of our worst fears began to be realized. I have not changed a word of this since those early months in 2001 and 2002. But listen to what has transpired and is transpiring as we apply it to this authoritarian fascist regime under which we are forced to exist right now. First, they came for the Muslims, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a Muslim. Then they came for immigrants, detaining them indefinitely, solely upon the certification of the Attorney General, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't an immigrant. Then they came to eavesdrop on suspects, consulting with their attorneys, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a suspect. Then they came to prosecute non-citizens before secret military commissions, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a non-citizen. Then they came to enter homes and offices for unannounced sneak and peek searches, and I didn't speak up because I had nothing to hide. Then they came to reinstate COINTELPRO and resume the infiltration and surveillance of domestic, religious, and political organizations. And I didn't speak up because I no longer participated in any organizations. Then they came to arrest American citizens and hold them indefinitely without any charges and without access to lawyers. And I didn't speak up because I would never be arrested. Then they came to institute TIPS, the Terrorism Information and Prevention System, recruiting citizens to spy on other citizens. And I didn't speak up because I was too afraid to speak up. Then they came to institute the Total Information Awareness Program, collecting private data on every man, woman, and child in America. And I didn't speak up because I couldn't do anything about it. Then they came for immigrants and students from selected countries, luring them under the requirements of special registration as a ruse to seize them and detain them. And I didn't speak up because I was not required to register. Then they came for anyone who objected to government policy because it only aided the terrorists and gave ammunition to America's enemy. And I didn't speak up because I didn't speak up. And then they came for me. And by that time, no one was left to speak up. Ladies and gentlemen, we are living in a country where you can open the Los Angeles Times and see a front page headline, LAPD used informer to spy on activists. The Mole was ordered to monitor meetings of Refuse Fascism ahead of an anti-Trump protest, records show. This is the United States of America today. It's a United States of America that is plagued by the Trump-Pence regime, but that did not start this way only under the Trump-Pence regime. It didn't start only after 9/11. It has been endemic in the racism and bigotry and discrimination and hatred that all too frequently raises its ugly head in this country, and that has called on crucial moments in the history of this country for the people to organize and resist. This is a copy of a police surveillance report that was disclosed in discovery in the trial of the freeway defendants. This report of their investigation reads, and listen to how constitutionally protected activities are stated in a police report as if they are somehow crimes, somehow ugly, illegitimate, improper activities that a police force and a city attorney must use its resources to move against. Based on their stated and published ideology, this group planned to initiate an Occupy Wall Street type movement in downtown Los Angeles on November 4, 2017. Over the course of the following 4 days, they hope to gather as many sympathetic groups and individuals as possible in order to initiate a further, larger act of civil disobedience that was to begin on November 8, 2017, the anniversary of the last presidential election. Refuse Fascism LA is a coordinated subgroup of the national anti-fascist group, refusefascism.org. The collective goal of the national group and our local RFLA group is the furtherance of an agenda that includes mass protests, freeway closures, and government land occupations. This program went on to conduct illegal, unconstitutional surveillance, secreting themselves and disclosing as undisclosed participants in the meetings of Refuse Fascism, lying and portraying themselves as sympathetic to the goals of Refuse Fascism. They secretly recorded those meetings, expecting to find evidence of wrongdoing. Frankly, you read the transcripts, and these are simple organizing meetings. Meetings you and I have attended often for years. Oscar Wilde said, "The problem with socialism is too many meetings." So instead of documenting sinister, corrupt, and illegal activities, it almost seemed as if these earnest activists were persuading the informant to the rightness of their cause. Listen for about a page to one of these transcripts. Confidential informant. What about, are we gonna do like freeway things again? Or major things like that? Activist. I'm not sure. Confidential informant. Yeah, I'll just have to keep coming to meetings to find out. Activist. Yeah, I mean, you want to be part of that? Confidential informant. I'm down. Why not, you know? Activist. Dude. Confidential informant. I thought the freeway thing was pretty good. Activist, yeah? Confidential informant. It sends out messages. Activist, Confidential informant. It stops people. It makes them look and think. And activist, well, that's a confidential informant. That's the whole object. Activist, well, yeah, that's the whole object, and that's one of the reasons that a lot of people are pissed. Maybe even though they hate Trump, they're like, that's not a way to make who wake up, and it's everyday routine. They wake up and they take a shower and they eat breakfast and they get their cup of coffee. They get their cup of coffee and they get in their cars and they're driving and they're thinking about what their day is going to be and they're going to do at work. Confidential informant. And then they run into us. Activists. Well, fucking fascism right here is consolidating, attacking Muslims, attacking LGBTQ people, attacking immigrants, threatening to incinerate 25 million people in North Korea. Yeah, everything that they're doing, attacking the media. And the fascists, right? They're driving. And, oh shit, like what's going on? And why are these cars stopping? Oh, like, their confidential informant. Yeah, they're going to get mad, and they're going to look and see what's happening. Activists, my whole day, my routine, my whole day is being interrupted by these people. And when they get out of their cars and they see November 4, it begins. Confidential informant, it must mean something. Activists actually raising their sights and fucking just looking at what they see, right here, right? Confidential informant, opening their minds. Activists, there's a bigger world out there than just, drinking your coffee and hopping in your car. Confidential informant and going to work. Activist and going to work and then come back and then the next day and then the next day and then the next day. Confidential informant. There's more to it. There's more to life. More important things. Activist, yeah. Even though the idea is under capitalism, a lot of people do have to do all of that to be able to survive. That's another contradiction, that people do have to hop on their cars, have to do, just look straight at what's going on with them, because that is capitalism. That's what they got to do to be able to survive, So that is a contradiction. And we have to fight, we have to struggle for people to get over that shit, for people to actually raise their sights and see, look, fascism is fighting to be consolidated. And that's gonna mean for the people of the world, confidential informant, yeah. So I've got to tell you that the courage of these young people in standing up to that regime and disrupting it. There's a lot of reasons people go on the freeway. Unfortunately, people wait in heavy traffic all the time. Heavy traffic is part of life in modern America. Well, we should also be part of American life, and what should be part of American life is protesting the Trump-Pence regime. Think about this freeway stoppage. We interrupt traffic so politicians can go to their next fundraiser. We interrupt traffic so politicians can go to the airport and fly on to their next meeting. We do that. We accept that. People wait in traffic for that. We delay traffic to make movies in this big city of Los Angeles. Traffic waits to make movies. Traffic waits for a car chase on the news. Traffic waits for a lot of reasons in this city and in cities around this country. How about making traffic wait to protest a fascist, racist regime? These courageous activists were charged with conspiracy. Conspiracy was developed in the 13th century as a tool of monarchies to suppress any resistance to those regimes. Conspiracy, charging conspiracy, implies secrecy, evil, plotting, and treachery. But a great Supreme Court Justice, Robert Jackson, in 1949 said conspiracy constitutes a serious threat to fairness in our administration of justice. And Judge Leonard Hand in 1925 said that conspiracy is the darling of the modern persecutor's nursery. Dissenters. Throughout history, conspiracy, criminal prosecutions, criminalizing lawful protest has been the device of governments to suppress dissent and disagreement. We saw it among the dissenters and the anarchists in World War I, among the communists in the 1950s and 60s, among Vietnam War protesters. And in an important Supreme Court case, Justice Jackson said, "I consider criminal conspiracy a dragnet device capable of perversion into an instrument of injustice." The second protest we're talking about today was a group of courageous protesters who went to object to the speech of Steve Mnuchin at UCLA, a college campus dedicated to academic freedom, to freedom of speech. Who says when the question and answer period should begin? The question and answer period began when those young, courageous students chose to have a question and answer period. Mr. Mnuchin could wait his turn to speak. Why don't those students have an equal right to speak in an open college campus? We should be applauding, not criminalizing that kind of conduct. We've got to speak up against the use of criminal trials to punish lawful protest. At the recent trial of the freeway defendants, the prosecution was losing its way. They thought they had the jury convinced that this was a simple case of trespass. Believe it or not, prosecutors paid with our tax money told the jury it was as simple as peanut butter and jelly. That's what they told that jury. During voir dire, when the jurors were being questioned and the prosecutor tried out that line, one of the prospective jurors raised his hand and said, "I don't think it's that simple." So these young people spoke and they testified in their own defense. And that jury got it. Sometimes juries get it. And that jury understand why that freeway was blocked. By the way, the video shows you cars got around the sign anyway. And at UCLA, they made it worse. Outside the protest room, they told other protesters they had to disband. They were lawfully exercising their rights. And the police force of UCLA issued a verbal ban that those protesters could not come back to campus for 7 days. And when the charges for the original protests were dropped, and one of these courageous protesters, who I think is with us today, came back to campus within 7 days to participate in 11 minutes of silence, he was arrested for violating the ban that had been orally issued by the police force previously. This is in First Amendment law, what is called a prior restraint. They were muzzling those students not to come back for 7 more days, to lawfully exercise their rights during that period. And when they did come back to lawfully exercise their rights, they were prosecuted and arrested again. That's unconstitutional, unconscionable, and we should all be resisting and opposing it. Now, let me close with two comments. There's an extraordinary new book just published, The Terror of the Unforeseen, by Henry Rohde. Extraordinary writer, many of you know his work. Henry Rohde, The Terror of the Unforeseen. Listen to his words. We are in a real and present danger. People of power have turned their backs on the cautionary histories of the fascist and Nazi regimes, and in doing so willingly embrace a number of authoritarian messages and tropes. The cult of the leader, the discourse of the savior, white nationalism, a narrative of decline, unchecked casino capitalism, systemic racism, silence in the face of a growing police state, the encouragement of state-endorsed violence, the hollowing out of democracy by corporate power, a grotesque celebration of greed, a massive growth in the inequality of wealth, power, and resources, a brutal politics of disposability, an expanded culture of cruelty, and a disdain for public virtues, all wrapped up in an authoritarian populism. That's what we're facing. That's why we're here. I was very touched by the words of Peter Alsop in your song, Draw the Line. He was previewing those drivers on the freeway. We'll get up and go to work like everything is fine. And he talked about his children, and that touched me deeply. I have 3 kids and 3 grandkids. My oldest grandchild invented a name for me, Peepaw. I am Peepaw to my grandchildren. And I imagine, as my grandchildren grow older and study history and study this period in American history, they will come to me and ask, Peepaw, what did you do back then? Peepaw, how did you let this happen? I have to answer that question for my grandkids. You have to answer that question for every person in your lives. We have to answer that question for the children and the grandchildren in this country and around this world. What did you do then? And I want to close with the words of Frederick Douglass, the great former slave and abolitionist leader who spoke courageously in another time that demanded bravery and people to resist. He said, it's not the light that is needed but fire. It's not the gentle shower but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake. The feeling of the nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be roused. The propriety of the nation must be startled. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed. Thank you very much.